All right, buckle up because today we're going deep into the heart of the Bhagavad-gītā, specifically Chapter 5. You've given us quite the trove of material commentaries, notes, even that striking analogy of the lotus leaf. Clearly, this idea of action versus inaction in finding liberation really resonated with you. What's got you hooked?
What captivates me is how this chapter presents a dilemma that still resonates thousands of years later. How do we live in the world with all its demands and distractions without being utterly consumed by it?
Right. It's like we're all Arjuna on the battlefield, wrestling with these seemingly contradictory commands from Krishna. First, renounce all actions, then act with devotion. If I were Arjuna, I'd be utterly bewildered. How can we reconcile these seemingly opposing ideas?
Well, Arjuna's confusion is understandable, but it stems from a limited understanding of action and inaction. The true meaning runs far deeper than simply being physically passive or active. The key, the Gita whispers, lies in the realm of desire. Where is your desire directed? That's the crux of it.
So it's less about what we're doing on the outside and more about the inner state of our intentions, our motivations.
Precisely. Think of it this way. You could be incredibly busy, engaged in countless actions, yet if your mind clings to personal desires and outcomes, you're firmly bound to the cycle of suffering. But if you can shift your focus, act in alignment with a higher purpose, offering the fruits of your labor without attachment. That's karma yoga, the path of action through devotion.
It's like the difference between frantically paddling against the current and effortlessly floating downstream, guided by a deeper force.
What a beautiful way to put it. You've hit upon the essence of this chapter, the paradox of finding liberation through action. But action performed with a detached heart, a mind free from the chains of ego-driven desire.
You highlighted that lotus leaf analogy, and it feels particularly relevant here. Can you unpack that for us?
Okay. Imagine a lotus leaf, its surface of vibrant green, resting serenely amidst murky water. Despite being surrounded, the water simply beads and rolls off, leaving it untouched. This, the Gita whispers, is the essence of detachment.
We can be in the world, active participants even, yet not allow ourselves to be stained by its negativity, by our attachments to outcomes.
Exactly. We cultivate an inner state of non-attachment to the fruits of our actions. It's not about renouncing the world or shirking our responsibilities, but rather changing our relationship to them.
This is where that idea of the body as a nine-gated city comes into play, right? It's an image that really captured my imagination.
Ah, yes. The 9 gates, as you know, are the senses sight, smell, taste, touch, hearing, and the more subtle channels of the mind. Imagine yourself within this bustling city bombarded by sights, sounds, temptations, constantly pulled in different directions by your senses.
Trapped by the illusion that true fulfillment lies in chasing after those external stimuli.
The Gita reminds us that true freedom comes not from escaping the city, but from transforming our inner landscape. It's about recognizing that we hold the keys to our own liberation.
So liberation isn't about some external achievement, some distant utopia, but an internal state of being achievable here and now amidst the hustle and bustle of our daily lives.
That's the incredible power of the Bhagavad-gītā's message. It's a guidebook for navigating this very human experience, not escaping it.
It's not about becoming indifferent to the world, but rather cultivating a quiet space within ourselves where we can observe those desires, those attachments, without being ruled by them.
The Gita reminds us that we are not our thoughts, our senses, or our desires. We are something far greater, something eternal, and realizing that truth is the key to unlocking true freedom.
Okay, this is all starting to click for me, but I have to ask, if we're not supposed to be attached to outcomes, if true freedom is an internal state, how do we make sense of suffering? What about the misfortunes that befall us, the injustices we witness? Is it wrong to feel anger, sadness, frustration? The text mentions misconceptions about God, particularly blaming him for our woes. This is something I've always wrestled with.
You've hit upon a universal human experience, the tendency to seek external explanations, even blame for our suffering. But the Gita, ever the wise guide, reminds us of a fundamental truth often overlooked: the power of our own free will.
We're not simply puppets at the mercy of fate or divine whims.
Exactly. While we might not control the circumstances that life throws our way, we always have the power to choose our response.
That's both empowering and a little terrifying, isn't it? The responsibility for our own happiness, our own liberation, rests squarely on our shoulders.
Indeed, and understanding this delicate dance between free will and destiny is essential for genuine inner peace. It's not about blaming God, but rather recognizing our own agency, our own capacity for growth and transformation.
It's about recognizing the inherent divinity within ourselves, the ability to choose our responses, to rise above the challenges life throws our way, even in the face of adversity.
Precisely. And this leads us to another powerful idea woven throughout the Bhagavad-gītā, the transformative, liberating power of knowledge.
So it's not enough to just intellectually grasp these concepts. We have to embody them, allow that knowledge to transform our perception, our actions.
Imagine the sun rising, its golden rays piercing through the darkness, scattering the shadows. In the same way, the light of true understanding has the power to banish the darkness of ignorance, the root of our suffering. The more we understand, the more clearly we see, the freer we become.
It's like the scales fall from our eyes, and we begin to see the world, ourselves, and our place in it with newfound clarity.
Beautifully said. And as our understanding deepens, the Gita challenges us to expand our compassion, to see beyond the superficial differences that divide us, to recognize the interconnectedness of all beings.
You highlighted this idea of seeing all beings with equal vision, and it's a concept that feels both radical and profoundly necessary, especially in our increasingly polarized world.
It's one of the most challenging yet rewarding teachings of the Gita, the call to view all beings, regardless of social standing, background, even species, as equals. The learned sage, the humble cow, the majestic elephant, even those deemed outcasts by society, all possess a spark of the divine.
It's about recognizing the inherent worth, the shared spark of divinity that connects us all, regardless of our differences.
Precisely. This shift in perception from separation to unity is the cornerstone of true inner peace and liberation.
And this inner transformation, this recognition of our interconnectedness, is something that can ripple outwards, impacting not just our own lives, but the world around us.
Absolutely. As we cultivate inner peace, compassion, and understanding, we naturally begin to radiate those qualities outwards, influencing our interactions, our communities, our world. It's a beautiful cycle of transformation.
It's like that beautiful analogy from the text that you pointed out, how a fish nurtures its young simply by its presence, its gaze, while a tortoise nurtures through meditation, through focused attention from afar. Even when physically separated, that connection, that love, can still be felt.
What a powerful image of how we can nurture our own spiritual growth, our connection to the divine. Just as the fish and tortoise nurture in their own way, we too can find paths to connect with that deeper truth, even amidst the challenges of our daily lives.
Even when life feels like a chaotic battlefield, we can still find moments of stillness, of focused attention, to connect with that inner sanctuary. And the Gita offers some practical techniques for navigating those choppy waters, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned focusing the eyes between the eyebrows, regulating the breath. Techniques that sound surprisingly familiar to modern mindfulness practices.
It's remarkable, isn't it? Thousands of years ago, the sages of the Bhagavad-gītā were already tapping into these timeless practices for stilling the mind, calming the senses, and creating space for inner peace and wisdom to emerge.
So it's not just about studying ancient texts, but about breathing life into these practices, integrating them into our modern lives.
Precisely. The Gita is a living, breathing guide, not a dusty relic of the past. It offers a toolbox filled with techniques for self-mastery and spiritual growth that are just as relevant today as they were millennia ago.
And one of the key tools seems to be this idea of shifting our focus from the external to the internal. From seeking happiness in fleeting pleasures to cultivating a deep well of contentment within. You mentioned this state of Brahma Nirvana. Can you elaborate on what that truly means?
Well, it's not about isolating ourselves from the world or denying the richness of human experience. Brahma Nirvana is about transcending the limitations of the ego, of those incessant desires and attachments that keep us tethered to the cycle of suffering.
So it's less about changing our external circumstances and more about transforming our internal landscape.
Exactly. Imagine reaching a state of such profound inner peace that the chaos of the world no longer has the power to disturb your equilibrium. You become like that lotus leaf, still present, yet untouched by the turmoil swirling around you.
That doesn't mean we become indifferent to suffering or injustice, though, right?
Absolutely not. In fact, by cultivating inner peace and clarity, we are better equipped to act with compassion and wisdom in the world. We can approach challenges with a sense of equanimity, free from the distortions of anger or fear.
So Brahma Nirvana isn't about detaching from the world, but rather detaching from our ego-driven reactions to it.
Precisely. It's about finding that space within where we can observe our thoughts, emotions, and desires without being swept away by them. From that place of inner stillness, we can act with greater clarity, purpose, and compassion.
This is all incredibly insightful. We've covered so much ground, From Arjuna's battlefield dilemma to the tranquil state of Brahma-nirvana, from lotus leaves to nine-gated cities, it's like we've peeled back layers of understanding, revealing the timeless wisdom at the heart of the Bhagavad-gītā.
It's been a privilege to explore these profound ideas with you. The Gita is a bottomless well of wisdom, offering endless insights into the human condition.
And what's really resonating with me is that it's not just a philosophical treatise, but a practical guidebook for living a more meaningful and fulfilling life.
Absolutely. The true power of the Gita lies in its ability to inspire us to not just understand these teachings, but to embody them, to weave them into the very fabric of our lives.
And that brings us to a question that's been swirling in my mind throughout this deep dive. The Gita speaks extensively about achieving liberation from suffering, about reaching the state of Brahma-nirvana. But what does that actually look like in practice? How does that inner peace, that wisdom, manifest in the real world, in our everyday interactions?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's one that each of us must answer for ourselves through self-discovery and introspection.
So the Gita provides the map, but the journey is ultimately ours to take.
Exactly. And it's a journey filled with both challenges and incredible rewards. The more we lean into these teachings, the more we integrate them into our lives, the more we begin to experience the world and ourselves through the lens of Brahma-nirvana.
And perhaps that's the most beautiful and empowering message of the Bhagavad-gītā. That liberation, that deep sense of inner peace and fulfillment is not some distant shore, but a journey we can embark on right here, right now.
Yeah.
It's not about reaching some distant finish line, but about embracing the journey itself. Each step infused with greater awareness, purpose, and peace.
And that's what makes this deep dive so rewarding. It's not just about acquiring knowledge, but about igniting a spark of curiosity, a desire to explore these timeless truths, and discover how they resonate in your own life.
So to you listening, as you continue to delve into the Bhagavad-gītā, we leave you with this invitation. What does Brahma-nirvana look like for you? How can you embody that inner peace, that wisdom in your daily life? How might your actions, your relationships, your very presence in the world be transformed by embracing these teachings?
It's a lifelong exploration, a journey of self-discovery that has the power to transform not just our own lives, but the world around us.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the Bhagavad-gītā. Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.